Power does not begin where most people think it does. It does not begin with money, titles, strength, or applause. Those are decorations placed on power after it has already arrived. Real power begins much earlier, in a far more uncomfortable place: disillusionment. The first stage of power is confusion. This is where nearly everyone lives and dies. At this stage, people misunderstand the rules of the world, but believe in them with religious certainty. They are convinced that effort is always rewarded, that truth naturally rises, that competence inevitably wins. They repeat these ideas because they were taught to, not because they have seen them proven. This belief system is not innocence, it is blindness. Look closely at the world around you. The hardest workers are rarely the most influential. The most honest voices are often ignored. The loudest moralists are usually powerless. Meanwhile, people of average intelligence, questionable skill, and flexible ethics rise steadily, not because they are better, but because they understand something others refuse to see. The world does not reward virtue. It rewards perception. At the first stage of power, a man still believes life is a merit-based system. He thinks success is delayed justice. He tells himself, "My time will come." This thought keeps him obedient. It keeps him patient, and patience, when misplaced, becomes a leash. Power does not come to those who wait. It comes to those who recognize that waiting is a trap. This is the moment that separates the many from the few. Some people feel this truth and immediately reject it. They call it cynical. They say it's negative. They retreat back into comforting lies because the truth threatens their identity. Others feel it and become bitter, angry at the world, loud in their resentment. These people are dangerous, but only to themselves. Anger without strategy is just noise, but a very small number do something different. They become quiet. This is where the first real transformation begins. The man at the first true stage of power stops trying to be seen and starts trying to see. He stops arguing with reality and starts studying it. He watches who speaks and who listens. He observes who gets rewarded and who gets used. He notices patterns others dismiss as coincidence. He sees that power moves silently, that those who control outcomes are rarely the ones explaining themselves, that authority is often borrowed while influence is taken. He understands that people don't follow truth, they follow confidence. They don't respect honesty, they respect certainty. And certainty does not require correctness, only conviction. This realization is shocking, even painful. It feels like betrayal. Everything he was taught about fairness collapses at once. But this pain is necessary. It burns away illusion. And illusion is the greatest enemy of power. At this stage, the man becomes dangerous not because he acts, but because he no longer reacts emotionally. Insults stop provoking him. Injustice stops surprising him. Praise stops intoxicating him. He begins to see emotions as tools others use and as weaknesses he must master in himself. He realizes something else as well. Most people do not want truth. They want reassurance. They want narratives that protect their self-image. This is why those who speak uncomfortable truths are often punished, not because they are wrong, but because they disrupt psychological comfort. So the man at this stage stops trying to wake others up. He understands that waking people is not power, it is liability. He learns to let people sleep. This is the first stage of power: awareness without action, observation without exposure, understanding without announcement. Most people never pass this stage. They either retreat back into fantasy or burn themselves out fighting a system they do not understand. But the one who moves forward carries a quiet advantage. He now knows the game is not about being right, it is about being effective. He understands that morality is not a shield, that intentions are invisible, that perception is reality, and that the world does not ask who deserves power. It asks who is willing to take responsibility for outcomes. This knowledge is heavy. It isolates. It forces restraint. But it also opens the door to the next stage, where power stops being something you observe and starts becoming something you influence. And that is where things truly begin to change. Once a man understands how power truly works, he enters a dangerous phase. Knowledge without positioning is frustration. Seeing the game without a seat at the table creates hunger, and hunger, if uncontrolled, exposes weakness. This is why the second stage of power is not action, but placement. At this stage, the man realizes something critical Effort is visible, positioning is not. The world praises those who work hard while quietly elevating those who stand in the right place at the right time. Power does not reward movement. It rewards leverage. And leverage comes from proximity to resources, to decision makers, to narratives. Most people try to prove their worth. They believe that if they demonstrate value loudly enough, recognition will follow. But power flows in the opposite direction. Recognition is not a response to value. Value is assigned after recognition has already been granted. Those who understand this stop asking to be seen. They range to be unavoidable. The man in the second stage stops chasing opportunities and begins placing himself where opportunities are forced to pass through him. He becomes useful, but never indispensable in an obvious way. Obvious indispensability creates targets. Quiet usefulness creates dependency. He learns to reduce friction for those above him while increasing friction for those below, without ever appearing responsible for either. This is subtle power. This is influence without fingerprints. He becomes the solution people rely on without realizing how trapped they would be without him. At this stage, he also learns the cost of visibility. Visibility attracts attention, and attention attracts competition. The higher you rise visibly, the more people prepare to pull you down. So he advances sideways, not upward. He gains access without titles. He earns trust without praise. He lets others take credit while he accumulates control. This restraint is misunderstood by those still asleep. They see him as passive. They mistake silence for submission. But silence is not absence, it is camouflage. The man also begins to understand hierarchy in a deeper way. He sees that formal power and real power rarely align. The person with authority is often managed by the person with information. The person with the title is often guided by the person who controls timing. Power is not who decides, it is who shapes the options. So he positions himself near information. He listens more than he speaks. He becomes the first to know and the last to react. This creates an aura of foresight. Others begin to feel that he always knows what's coming. Even though he rarely predicts anything aloud. At this stage, he removes emotion from negotiation. He does not argue. He does not defend. Defense signals weakness. He allows others to believe they are winning because perceived victory disarms opposition. He understands that losing small battles strategically creates space to win the war invisibly. He also stops revealing ambition. Ambition attracts resistance. Those who declare their hunger for power invite sabotage. The second stage man hides his hunger behind usefulness. He appears loyal, neutral, even replaceable. In reality, he is becoming a quiet bottleneck. People begin to route decisions through him without realizing it. They seek his input casually. They ask for his opinion just to check, and each time, he shapes outcomes slightly, not enough to be noticed, but enough to shift direction over time. This is the moment where power begins to bend reality, not through force, but through architecture. He does not push people, he arranges the hallway they must walk through. Most people fail at this stage because it demands patience without recognition. There is no applause for positioning, no public reward, only delayed dominance. Many expose themselves too early. They reveal intent. They demand credit, and the system responds by removing them. But the man who survives understands a brutal truth. Power does not come to those who deserve it. It comes to those who can hold it without announcing it. The third stage of power is exposure. This is the point where influence becomes noticeable, and with visibility comes danger. Until now, the man has operated in shadows, shaping outcomes without attracting attention. But power cannot remain invisible forever. At some point, its gravity is felt. People begin to notice patterns. They begin to connect outcomes, and they begin to watch. Most men fail at this stage because they misunderstand what visibility requires. They believe exposure means dominance, assertion, presence. They start speaking more. They start claiming credit. They start enjoying the feeling of being needed. This is the moment power starts to rot. True power is not revealed through volume. It is revealed through restraint. At this stage, the man learns that every word he speaks creates a record, and every action creates an expectation. Expectations become constraints. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to contain. So he becomes deliberately inconsistent in minor ways while remaining reliable in outcomes. People trust results, not patterns they can copy. He understands that enemies are not born from opposition, but from envy. The moment others believe you are rising faster than they are, they begin preparing your fall. This is why public momentum is dangerous. Momentum attracts resistance before it becomes irreversible. So the man allows others to believe they are equal to him. He lets them feel comfortable. He avoids humiliating anyone openly. Public humiliation creates private revenge. Instead, he weakens rivals indirectly by elevating them into positions where their limitations are exposed. Naturally, he lets the system punish them. This is also where he learns the art of controlled visibility. He appears just enough to be acknowledged, but never enough to be challenged directly. He speaks rarely, but when he does, people listen not because of charisma, but because of timing. He enters conversations late. He leaves early. He lets silence amplify his presence. At this stage, people start projecting power onto him. They assume intent where there is none. They interpret neutrality as strategy. This is dangerous because perception can turn into paranoia. So he diffuses tension by appearing modest, even uncertain at times. False vulnerability lowers defenses. He also understands that loyalty is not built through kindness, but through shared risk. He allows others to feel involved in decisions, even when outcomes are already shaped. People protect what they believe they helped create. This creates invisible alliances. But this stage comes with its greatest temptation: control. The man now has enough influence to force outcomes. He could push. He could dominate. He could reveal strength. And this is where most men destroy everything they have built. Force creates resistance. Dominance invites rebellion. Control, when exposed, becomes a threat that must be eliminated. So he resists the urge to win visibly. He chooses ambiguity over certainty. He allows others to take symbolic leadership while he maintains practical authority. Titles remain elsewhere. Responsibility quietly roots to him. He also begins to understand a brutal truth. People do not fear power, they fear unpredictability. A powerful man who is predictable can be negotiated with, managed, or neutralized. A man whose reactions cannot be forecast creates hesitation. And hesitation is leverage. This is why he avoids emotional reactions. Anger, excitement, pride, these are signals. Signals reveal boundaries. He becomes unreadable, calm under pressure, indifferent to praise, unmoved by criticism. This emotional flatness unsettles others more than aggression ever could. At this stage, mistakes become expensive. A single misjudgment can collapse years of positioning. So he slows down. He increases distance between impulse and action. He lets time filter decisions. Time exposes motives. Time reveals allies and enemies. The fourth stage of power is disappearance. This is the stage almost no one understands, and even fewer survive. After visibility comes the most counterintuitive move of all: retreat. Not withdrawal out of weakness, but strategic absence. The man who has reached this stage understands something brutal: power decays. The moment it becomes expected. At the peak of influence, everyone is watching. Allies watch for weakness. Rivals watch for mistakes. Subordinates watch for signals they can exploit. The system itself begins to resist you, because systems are designed to neutralize anything that becomes too central. This is why visible power is temporary. Only hidden power lasts. So the man steps back. He stops being present in every decision. He allows processes to run without him. He lets others speak in rooms he once dominated. To the untrained eye, it looks like decline, like loss of ambition, like fatigue. But in reality, this is consolidation. By disappearing, he removes himself as a target while leaving his influence intact. People still act according to structures he designed, incentives he shaped, dependencies he created. His absence does not weaken the system, it proves his dominance over it. This is where he becomes untouchable. At this stage, he no longer needs to convince, persuade, or pressure. Outcomes arrive without explanation. Decisions align without coordination. Conflicts resolve themselves in his favor without his involvement. This is the highest form of power, when reality moves without your presence. He also understands something most never do: legacy is leverage. By not clinging to control, he becomes larger than any single role. People reference him. They quote him. They assume his approval or disapproval even when he is silent. Silence becomes authority. This is also the stage where ego must be completely destroyed. Any desire to be seen, credited, or admired will collapse everything. The man must be comfortable being misunderstood, being underestimated, even being forgotten publicly while remaining embedded privately. Most men cannot handle this. They return. They reassert themselves. They remind the world who they are. And the moment they do, power begins to drain away. What was once gravity becomes noise. But the man who completes this stage understands the final truth of power. Permanence requires absence. He is no longer reacting to threats because threats no longer form. He is no longer competing because competition requires proximity. He operates above urgency, above conflict, above explanation. This is not domination. This is sovereignty. And then comes the final realization, the one that separates rulers from legends. Power is not about control over others. That is temporary. True power is control over timing, knowing when to speak, when to act, when to vanish, and when to never return. Most people will never reach even the first stage. They will chase attention. They will confuse noise for influence. They will mistake movement for progress. But a very small number will recognize the pattern, survive the silence, resist visibility, and master disappearance. Those are the ones history does not always name but always obeys. This is why most never reach the top. And why the top is rarely where people are looking.